Hello, I'm Olivia, 26 years old, and today I want to tell you about a past that broke my family apart. It's not an easy story to tell, but the more I keep it in my heart, the more painful it becomes. That pain still doesn't go away. It gnaws at me every day, making me unable to forget. Sometimes, I just wish I could go back to that time, to prevent myself from making mistakes. Back to when I was 20 years old. I was a university student, focusing on my studies, looking forward to a bright future. That's when I met Mason, a man almost 10 years older than me. He wasn't a very outstanding person on the outside, but after meeting many times through mutual friends, Mason and I began to understand each other better. And then, without knowing when, we officially entered a loving relationship. Mason was nearly 30 at that time, and was working in the sales department of a company. He was mature, understanding, and always gentle, taking care of me as if I were everything to him. In my heart, Mason gradually became a special person. Even though I was young, still busy studying and enjoying my student days, every time I was with Mason, I felt protected and loved in a way I had never known before. As time passed, our feelings grew deeper. Mason began to mention marriage. He said that he wanted me to be his companion for the rest of my life. And more than that, he was willing to ensure that I had a full life, without having to worry about finances. Mason suggested that he could support me, that I would no longer have to work hard while studying. Hearing him say that, I felt an indescribable joy in my heart. But at the same time, there was also a bit of anxiety and conflict. At that time, although I loved Mason very much, deep down, I still wanted to continue studying and improve myself before getting married. I still had many dreams and ambitions that had not been fulfilled. I did not want to give up my studies because of love. Nor did I want to depend completely on Mason, even though I knew he was willing to provide for me. Therefore, I told Mason that I wanted to focus on studying first. I told him that I wanted to finish my studies and have a solid career foundation before getting married. No matter how much Mason tried to convince me, no matter how many times he promised and affirmed that he could take care of and raise me, I still firmly refused his proposal. That decision was not easy for me, and I knew Mason was also very sad. But deep down, I believed that it was the right thing, the best choice for both of us at that time. After I refused many times, Mason seemed to have run out of patience. One day, he asked me out to the familiar coffee shop where we had our first dates. Looking at his eyes that day, I had a premonition that something was wrong. Mason sat across from me, pondering for a long time before speaking. He said, in a slow but firm voice, that he wanted to break up. He said that although he loved me very much, he couldn't wait any longer. He wanted to get married soon to help his family, to fulfill his duties as a man. When I heard those words, my heart ached. I tried to stay calm, but tears kept falling. I didn't blame him because I understood the pressure and expectations he faced. But knowing that I was about to lose the person I loved, that feeling really hurt me. Although I was sad and cried a lot, in the end, I accepted the breakup. I accepted that this love was probably not meant for me, and that perhaps we would both be better off on separate paths. As time passed, I gradually learned to forget about Mason and focus on my own life. At first, the emptiness made me uncomfortable, but as each day passed, the wound in my heart gradually healed. Then I told myself that life must go on, that I had a future ahead of me, and that love would come to me again when I was truly ready. After many months, I had almost forgotten about Mason. I finished my studies and officially graduated. However, at that time, I still had not found a stable job. With a little experience and knowledge in the business field, I applied for an office job at a small business company to gain more practical experience. The first days working here were quite difficult, but I tried to learn, improve myself, hoping to develop my career. It was at this company that I met Lucas, the man who later became my husband and also Mason's younger brother. The first day I met Lucas, I had no idea that he had a connection with Mason. He is a very approachable colleague. always willing to help a newbie like me. Lucas has a gentle smile and polite manner that makes me feel comfortable whenever I am around him. At first, Lucas only helped me with my work. He showed me how to organize documents, guided me on how to make reports and handle difficult situations with customers. I felt lucky to have a colleague like him, who was always patient and willing to support me. The days working with Lucas gradually became my little joys, and without knowing when, I started to look forward to the moments when he appeared by my side. Through our conversations, Lucas and I became closer. He shared with me his difficulties at work, and I also confided in him the things I encountered. We gradually became close friends, always encouraging and supporting each other. Lucas is thoughtful and a good listener, which makes me feel understood. Not long after, the feelings between Lucas and I blossomed. From the closeness and sympathy in work and life, we officially entered a love relationship. Lucas took care of me with all his sincerity. He was always by my side, sharing every joy and every sadness. To me, he was not only a lover but also a companion on the career path. The time together passed quickly, and I felt the deep love that Lucas had for me. It was a genuine feeling, not too noisy but warm and lasting. In my heart, he gradually became the person I wanted to be with, wanted to build a long-term life with. When we first fell in love with Lucas, our feelings were so strong that it was hard to be apart for even a day. Unfortunately, the company had strict rules prohibiting employees from falling in love, so we had to keep our relationship a secret. Every time we were at the company, we kept our distance, only daring to look at each other through our eyes, not daring to show any emotional gestures. We were like thieves, secretly exchanging warm glances and smiles when no one was looking, then spending all our time outside of work to be close to each other. After many months of dating, my feelings for Lucas grew deeper. I began to realize that he was the man I wanted to be with for the rest of my life. We had plans for the future, dreaming of a small house and children together. On a cool afternoon by the beach, Lucas proposed to me. He knelt down, holding a sparkling ring in his hand, his eyes filled with love. At that moment, my heart beat fast, filled with happiness. I nodded in agreement without hesitation. At that moment I believed that I was the happiest person in the world. The wedding day passed quickly. We were both excited and nervous at the thought of that moment. Friends and family from both sides were there to share this great joy with us. Everything was perfect, from the tuxedo, the wedding party to the sparkling scene of the ceremony. But then, as I was happily welcoming the guests, I suddenly caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was Mason. Mason stood there, elegant, in a neat suit, his deep eyes slightly surprised when he saw me. My whole body turned to stone. All the memories of him rushed back like a waterfall, sweeping away the happiness I had. My heart was pounding. My emotions were mixed and I was confused. How could I not know that the man I was about to marry was my ex-lover's younger brother? At that moment, a flood of memories and emotions came flooding back. I tried to tell myself that it was over, that Lucas was my choice, that I was happy, but Mason's eyes made my heart flutter, reminding me of everything that had happened between us. Standing there, I tried to stay calm, but inside I was in turmoil. If I could, I wanted to run away from this moment, but I reminded myself that Lucas was my present, my future. I quietly approached Lucas and asked about Mason. Lucas turned to look at me, a little surprised but gently replied, "Mason is my brother." His words were like a shock that made me speechless. My mind spinning and everything around me seemed to blur. How could I not know about this connection? During the time we were together, why had Lucas never mentioned Mason? A feeling of confusion and bewilderment filled my heart. Part of me wanted to run away, but the other part held on, reminding me of my love for Lucas. Despite my confusion, I continued the ceremony, trying to smile to hide the confusion in my soul. After the wedding, Lucas and I returned to live in the house he had prepared. I knew that from now on, I would have to live with Mason, my ex-lover, who was my everything, the person I once thought I would be with for the rest of my life. Now Mason was not only the past, but also my husband's brother. The person who would appear in my life every day. Lucas's family had only 2 brothers, so they were very close and relied on each other. This made me even more embarrassed. Not knowing how to face Mason, I couldn't openly tell Lucas how I felt, nor could I distance myself from Mason, because that would make Lucas feel confused. Every day in the new house, I had to fight with myself, with the turmoil of emotions that I could not express to anyone. What made things even more difficult was that Mason was not married. Mason lived in the same house as my husband and I, and that forced us to see each other every day, even though I tried to keep my distance. Every time we passed each other in the hallway, or unexpectedly met him in the kitchen, I felt my heart being squeezed. Every time he glanced at me, wordless but deep, as if recalling old memories, my heart was in turmoil. Mason was not married, and deep down I couldn't help but wonder if he still kept a small corner for me, just like I still couldn't completely forget him. Sitting under the same roof, his presence became an unhealed wound, occasionally throbbing, leaving me feeling both tormented and uneasy. I know I have to try to overcome these feelings, but every day with Mason, it gets harder and harder. One quiet afternoon, as I was cleaning the living room, Mason appeared. His eyes lingered on me longer than usual, and I could feel a quiet tension hanging between us. Marcus had just entered the bathroom, the sound of running water echoing, an odd accompaniment to this tense moment. Mason moved closer to me, his eyes never leaving my face. He seemed to want to say something, but then stopped. After a few seconds of silence, he spoke softly, his voice low and full of emotion. "Olivia, do you know how much I've been thinking about you all this time?" I was startled by his words. A feeling of unease rose in my heart, but I tried to stay calm. "Mason, I don't know what you're talking about. Lucas is my husband. We shouldn't have done this." Mason took another step toward me, his eyes filled with determination and pain. "I know, but my heart can't stop thinking about you. Olivia, ever since the day I saw you at the wedding, I couldn't get you out of my mind. You're the person I loved, the person I dreamed of spending my life with. And now, living together under the same roof every day, seeing you with Lucas, I can't take it anymore." I stepped back a little, trying to keep my distance. "Mason, I understand how you feel, but things are different now. Lucas is my husband. I can't betray him, nor can I destroy our happiness. I hope you understand and let the past rest in peace." Mason's gaze never left me, his deep eyes flashing with disappointment, then turning into fierce determination. "Do you think I'll give up so easily? I once held you in my arms, once thought we'd be together forever. Do you know how much pain I felt when I saw you with Lucas?" Fear rose in my heart as his eyes grew more and more determined. He took another step, leaving me with no way back. I tried to stay calm, but my voice trembled. "Mason, please stop. I chose Lucas, and I'm happy with him. We can't be like this. Please let the past go." But Mason didn't seem to hear me. His hand gently grasped mine, pulling me closer. I could feel his breath, and my heart was pounding, both scared and trapped between the past and the present. "Olivia, I can't stop thinking about you," he whispered, his voice shaking but determined. "I don't want to give up on you. I won't give up." I struggled to pull my hand away from his, trying to distance myself from this dangerous intimacy. "Mason, stop. I beg you. Don't do this." At that tense moment, the sound of the water in the bathroom stopped, signaling that Lucas had finished showering. Hearing the noise, Mason let go of my hand, his eyes flashing with confusion and regret, as if he suddenly realized his actions. He stepped back, trying to regain his composure, and immediately turned and walked out of the living room. Without saying a word, I stood there, my heart pounding, my heart filled with mixed emotions. Fortunately, Lucas appeared just in time to stop a moment that could have changed everything. Seeing him, I secretly felt relieved and grateful. But deep down, I knew that the relationship between me and Mason could never return to normal. After that tense encounter, I thought that everything would stop. that Mason would realize his mistake and keep his distance. But no, Mason seemed to be getting bolder and bolder. Whenever Lucas was not there, he did not hesitate to show his affection for me. His meaningful looks and words made me confused and worried. Even though he knew that I was his brother's wife, Mason had no intention of giving up. And this made me nervous every time I had to be alone with him. Then one morning, after we finished eating, both of us got ready for work. Lucas hurriedly went out the door, but left a document on the table. I realized it and decided to bring it to him at the company when I finished my housework. I continued working in the kitchen, planning to clean everything up before leaving the house. A moment later, there was a knock on the door. Thinking that Lucas had come back to get the document, I did not hesitate to pick up the document, smiled, and walked out to open the door. But when the door opened, it wasn't Lucas in front of me, but Mason. Mason didn't say a word, his eyes looking at me with emotion and tension. Then suddenly he stepped forward, pulled me into his arms, and hugged me tightly. I was surprised, trying to pull my hand away but couldn't. Mason, what are you doing? Stop, please. You're Lucas's wife, my sister-in-law, I tried to say, my voice trembling. But Mason didn't listen. His eyes were full of determination. Olivia, I can't stop thinking about you. I used to love you. And now every day I see you with Lucas. It's like torture. Do you know how much pain I've been in? I can't give you up. His voice was deep but full of longing. I shook my head, trying to get out of his arms. Mason, please stop. You're Lucas's wife now. We can't be like this. Mason still didn't back down, his eyes growing more intense. Can you honestly say that you don't have any feelings for me anymore? Olivia, I know you still have feelings for me. We used to belong together. And I believe that there's still a place in your heart for me. I choked up, but remained resolute. Mason, the past is over. Now I just want to live happily with Lucas. Please don't make things difficult for me anymore. However, my words seemed unable to reach him. Mason became more and more daring, squeezing me tighter, as if to prove that he would not let go. I struggled, trying to break free, but it seemed impossible to resist his strength. In desperation, I tried to call Lucas's name, hoping that he would return and stop everything, but no response came. I began to feel my strength draining, and the thought of having to accept this humiliation crossed my mind. The more I struggled, the more exhausted I became, and it seemed that I could no longer resist Mason. Finally, in desperation, I stopped, no longer having the strength to resist. I thought that perhaps I would have to endure this situation alone, in silence and shame, but life seemed to want to tease me. At the moment I gave up, the door suddenly opened. Lucas was back, and he stood there, seeing everything that was happening between me and Mason. His face was pale, full of disappointment and unconcealed anger. For a moment, I caught his eyes filled with extreme pain, as if he couldn't believe what he was witnessing. What are you and Mason doing? His voice rang out loudly, strong but trembling, as if it wanted to tear the space around him. That question was like a blow to my heart, making me step back, panicked. I quickly moved away from Mason, trying to say something to explain. But Lucas just looked at me silently, his eyes cold and desperate. The words stuck in my throat, and in that moment, I knew that any excuses were meaningless. Lucas didn't say anything more, just turned and walked out of the house. His figure left, leaving Mason and I in an empty, cold and stifling space. I watched Lucas's back, my heart heavy with the realization that our marriage was over. The love, the trust we once had now gone up in smoke. I turned to Mason, my eyes full of anger and resentment. But he just stood there, silent. His face showed a hint of regret, as if he had only now realized the full extent of his mistake. There was a long silence between us, a distance that could never be erased. I knew that everything had collapsed, that from now on my life would never be the same. I was left with only emptiness, regret, and guilt that I would have to bear forever. After the truth was revealed, Lucas left the house and never returned. The next day he filed for divorce. Without another word, leaving me to face the consequences of what had happened. After all, I had lost everything that I had considered most important. Lucas left me, taking with him the love and trust he once had for me. Mason and Lucas were now strangers. The family bond was shattered, and I was left with nothing but emptiness and unresolved regret. Looking back, I realized that a momentary loss of control can destroy the most precious things. Love is not just a temporary feeling, but also a responsibility, trust and respect for each other. In the end, I learned a valuable lesson of loss of control. A moment of weakness can destroy everything we once cherished. Just because of a moment of hesitation, I lost everything, from my loving husband to my peace of mind. Love is not just a temporary feeling, but also responsibility and respect for each other. Once trust is broken, there is no way to fix it. My story ended with an incomplete ending. I had to face the consequences of my mistakes. Not only losing Lucas but also losing a part of myself. It was a painful, difficult lesson, but it was also the only thing left for me to contemplate. I accept the punishment of fate, leaving the story as a reminder to anyone facing fluctuations in love. Never trade love and trust, because once lost, nothing can bring it back. My advice to everyone is to always cherish and protect what you have, especially love and trust in marriage. Sometimes, a moment of weakness, a wrong decision can destroy all the most precious things in life. Don't let temporary emotions make you leave your loved one, because when trust is lost, nothing can fix it. Love requires loyalty and responsibility. Listen to reason, control your emotions, and always remember that what you do today will determine your future happiness.